What's good, family? It's Alexus Rhone with Truth Meets Story. I am so excited to be here with you tonight to produce hashtag the Bounce Back RDU, a night of storytelling featuring 8 African-American storytellers, people who fell down and didn't stay down, they bounced back. Now listen, the original plan was for this series to be a live event at the City of Raleigh Museum. And then COVID-19 hit. But alas, thanks to tech innovators, yours truly, a social and cultural innovator, was able to pivot, and I could redraft the previous model to fit the virtual universe. In fact, this actually increased an opportunity. This created an opportunity for me to reach an international audience. I had my friends and family in Uganda. I was like, yo, y'all tuning in? They're like, Lex, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is 2 a.m. in Uganda, so we're going to catch the replay. But one of my old beaux in Ghana, Kwesi, said he was going to be up catching this live stream. Yep, America, the world is watching us. So this is an opportunity not just for me to expand the audience, to expand our reach, but there is increased exposure, particularly for the priceless opportunities for African Americans to tell their own stories of resilience, especially in service to commemorating Juneteenth or June 19, the day when Texas slaves were notified that they had been emancipated 2.5 years earlier. So there are lots of stories that have always circulated about how on earth were they able to keep that shield? Like how were they able to keep that undercover for so long? And we don't know. We don't know how that worked. But what we do know is that the slaves were freed and their descendants, we are thriving, and we've got the stories to prove it. Now, as an extra treat, I want you to join us for the post-show Q&A with a few of the storytellers. Submit your comments and questions on YouTube or Facebook if you're watching via Facebook. We have a moderator who's going to feed the questions and the comments into the live stream, and of course, we will answer them. And now, presenting hashtag the Bounce Back RDU, a virtual storytelling event produced in partnership with Seek Raleigh, a program of Raleigh Arts.
This presentation will include audio descriptions for the visually impaired. Hashtag the Bounce Back RDU, a virtual storytelling event produced by Alexus Rhone of Truth Meets Story of Raleigh Arts. For Black women as well as Black men, it is axiomatic that if we do not define ourselves for ourselves, we will be defined by others for their use and to our detriment. Audre Lorde. Alexus Rhone, an African-American woman and founder of Truth Meets Story, LLC, will tell a story titled A People Without a Formative Narrative. Alexus has curly hair and is standing in front of a brick building. We were all excited. Our seminary had just hired the foremost authority on the ethics and theology of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a Korean man, Dr. Hak Jun Lee. And we were excited, but we were also a little curious about how a son of Korea had come to have such love and affection for a son of our community. Dr. Lee hit that campus and he did not disappoint. But on the first day of class, I got my face cracked, but I also got my life fixed. He was going over the syllabus, discussing our reading assignments, integration papers, presentations, final analysis, comprehensive analysis. And I noticed what I perceived to be a gaping omission in the course content. And so I raised my hand and I said, "Excuse me, Dr. Lee, are we also going to discuss the improprieties of Dr. King? I mean, after all, this is an ethics class and his improprieties are part of public record." And Dr. Lee, for his part, was super gracious. And he said something like, you know, there are a lot of layers to Dr. King, and we're going to be digging into, to as many as we can. And so I thought it was an interesting answer, but it was not the one that I was looking for. I mean, I was expecting a rousing, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, we're going to get into all of that. I mean, I had been a part of these dominant culture institutions for many years. And, whenever we discussed anything about Dr. King, somehow his improprieties had always found a way into the conversation. And so Dr. Lee, in my immediate sort of assessment, was in violation of what had been the standard. And then he did a lecture that would set the tone for how we would evaluate the content for the entire quarter. The lecture was called The Art of Traditioning. And Dr. Lee said, in order for a tradition to take hold, there are 5 things that must be in place. A formative narrative, a way to celebrate that narrative, a celebration of that narrative, governing laws and values, a way to disseminate the information concerning the governing laws and values of that people, and a way to practice said governing laws and values of the people. And he says, so for example, let's take our Jewish brothers and sisters. What is their formative narrative? Whole class yells out, Exodus story. Like, good. He says, what is the celebration of that formative narrative? The Passover. And he says, what are the governing laws and values of our Jewish brothers and sisters? And we yell out, the Torah, the Pentateuch, the Ten Commandments. And he says, all right. He says, how do they disseminate that information? And we said, Jewish schools. And then he asked, how do they practice their governing laws and values? And we said, they live in community. They support each other. And he's like, great. He's like, now let's take Americans. What is the formative narrative for Americans? And we yell out, independence from Britain. He's like, good. What is the celebration of that formative narrative? Independence Day, 4th of July. Then he says, what are the governing laws and values for Americans? And we yell out, Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And he says, how do we disseminate information concerning our governing laws and values? Like public school system. And then he says, how do we practice our governing laws and values? And the conversation got a little wonky at that point. So we were saying things like, we elect servant leaders to represent us, and started talking about sort of the structure of the government. But we all chuckled at how, none of our responses to that question were as forceful as the previous assessments. And then he said, okay, now let's discuss African Americans. And he asked, what is the formative narrative for African Americans? And we all got quiet. One person said, is it the civil rights movement? Another person said it's the transatlantic slave trade. And the third person said, well, it's our West African ancestral roots. But no one could say for sure. And so we sat quietly. And then Dr. Lee said, if you don't know your formative narrative, you will adopt someone else's story where the heroes look like them and the villains look like you. Oh, I was gut punched at that moment because, see, it never occurred to me to question whether or not we were going to discuss the improprieties of white theologians before discussing their ethics. And up until that moment, it was odd how I never stopped to wonder, how is it that my government was able to get so close to Dr. King to record his improprieties and to make them part of a public record and still couldn't protect his life? My face was cracked. I was laid bare, but my life was also fixed because now I had a clue about what had been missing this entire time. It was the absence of a formative narrative. But I was also extremely hopeful because there are scholars like Dr. Wade Nobles, the foremost scholar on the psyche of people of African descent, who is doing a lot of work to create that formative narrative. And Dr. Ralph Batsui Watkins, my former professor in Atlanta, who is also doing some really pivotal work concerning the formative narrative of African Americans. He is actually recruiting young scholars to help be a part of that work. But today, when you ask, what is the formative narrative of African Americans? The answer with the most integrity is, I don't know. But our community is filled with stories of resilience. There's a gospel song that Aretha Franklin sang, how I got over. My soul looks back and wonders how I got over. Yeah, co-sign Aretha. A lot of folks look at our lives and they read our stories in the history annals of this country and they wonder, how on earth have this people, with everything that they have suffered, been able to survive and dare thrive, a lot of them? Well, I believe the answer to that question is found in the stories that you are about to hear. Stories of resilience, stories of hope as a part of the universal, the hope chest for all of humanity. Stories of the universal experience of resilience, particularized within the African American context. African Americans sharing stories about a time that they fell down, they didn't stay down, they bounced back. Presenting hashtag the bounce back RDU. Enjoy. In order to be whole, we must recognize the despair oppression plants within each of us. That thin, persistent voice that says our efforts are useless, it will never change, so why bother? Accept it. Audre Lorde. Ruby A. Jackson, an African American woman and a sports and STEM advocate, will tell a story titled Playing Small, an African American woman in corporate America. She has long brown dreadlocks and is wearing a pink jacket over a white shirt, standing in front of the Dorian Lind No Damsel mural, where Pocahontas is spray painting the wall in red with the message, remember the truth.
A slew of emails came through on my computer screen, and I sat there wondering, how in the world did all these women know that I didn't apply for that management position? A few hours before, it was just announced that Jason would move from his current department to become the manager of the department that I worked for 7 years. I had some questions for HR. When they finally replied, they told me, Ruby, we promise you, we didn't tell them that you didn't apply for that position. We simply told people that no woman applied for the position. There was one email in my inbox that I knew that I couldn't ignore. It was from Jessica. She and I have a really cool relationship, even to today. She's a white woman in her 50s, old enough to be my mother. And even though I'm often the leader and the manager in our relationship, she's the one who's encouraging me, just like she did in her email, where she asked, why didn't I apply for the position? I felt her scolding me and encouraging me at the same time. And what I replied to her at that time, she would later tell me she knew was BS. I gave her different reasons, like I had just taken in my teenage nephew and I needed to focus on his future and not mine. And that I was having fun where I was. That part was honest, but I really did want that position. So why didn't I apply? I've been with the company for 7 years, and I've been part of some of the biggest wins and biggest losses. One of my favorite times at the organization was actually when Reagan and I worked on building a struggling department that everyone had written off and given up on. For 2 years, we grew the business. to about $1 million in revenue. And then randomly, it was given to Jason. I didn't really care much. I was on a different project, being challenged. And that's one thing that I love about science and engineering, is that those projects are always challenging. And I welcome the challenges. So when it was given to Jason, I was a little hurt and a little upset that that group was like our baby. No one cared about it, but I moved on. So when this management position had come up, I for sure had planned to apply for it. Our company was going through so much change at the time. We had sold the business, bought another business, and I knew people on both sides of the aisle. Not only did I know the people, I knew the ins and outs of our group, our strengths, our weaknesses. I was for sure ready this time. I applied for 3 or 4 management positions before then, and I had been given so many different reasons on why I wasn't ready. And even though some of those I didn't agree with, I knew that this time I was absolutely ready. There was nothing standing in my way. So I planned to apply up until one day where I was sitting in a board meeting, planning for the team like we always did. And I learned that the group that Reagan and I built was actually coming back to our department. Now, and I started to put 2 and 2 together in my head. This group is with Jason, who's currently a manager. My group currently has a management position open. What's going to happen with Jason if this group comes back? Management told me everything I needed to know, and I decided not to apply. I never told anyone that story until one day I was sitting in that same boardroom. This time, me, Jessica, Jason, and a few other leaders. And we were there because Jessica had called us there. She was upset. She was irate, livid. You could clearly tell, because when she gets mad, her whole face starts to turn red, and she doesn't hide her emotions well. She had no reason to apologize for hiding them at that time. We had been encouraging Jessica for the past year to become an administrator of a software program. She had been requesting from us training to do her job effectively, to grow to the administrative level. And in that meeting, it was announced that 3 young men would be receiving training on the very same software that we were asking Jessica to become an expert on. She was livid. And she let us know that. What none of us expected. She pulled a feminist card and wondered if the only reason why she wasn't selected was she was a woman. After all, she had some really good valid points. One of the men was already an expert in the software, so why was he being trained? And 2 other ones weren't even working in the software as much as she was. So why weren't we sending her to training? I think we were all blindsided by her pulling the feminist card, and even just knowing how important her advancement was to her. I sat a few days later feeling a little ashamed, but also empowered and encouraged. One, I was ashamed that I didn't stand up more being Jessica's manager and fight for her. I was actually silent in the entire meeting. Two, she encouraged me and inspired me because I thought that I was the one that always felt like I was being locked out. And I honestly thought I was the only one sharing this experience, being a woman, being a Black woman. But that day, Jessica opened my eyes and made me realize that it was more than just about me. So I sat down with her and I shared my story. And I told her the real reason that I didn't apply for that management position. We laughed and she said she knew that I'd given her a BS answer at the time. Shortly after, another opportunity to work with another organization came for me. And I sat and I considered it. But this new position checked a lot of boxes for me. It was closer to home, a little less responsibility and more money, and very, very close to my community. I mean, I could walk to church and join noonday prayer, and that was important for me. So I sat over the weekend considering an opportunity. After all, I had just applied actually for my 5th position at this organization because another management position came up. So I knew that when I went in to give my resignation, that I could demand for almost anything I wanted because I knew my value, even though I didn't always stand up for myself. But after looking through my emails, once again, I saw a slew of emails over the past 4 years where I've been requesting women's leadership initiatives to be put in place so that we could promote a female leader to the business. All of them went on deaf ears. So I decided to part ways with the organization. Monday afternoon, I walked into the office, talked with Jason and a few other managers there, and let them know that I was leaving. They tried to convince me to stay. And I let them know that it wasn't anymore about money. It wasn't anymore about rising to a management position there, but it was about values, about feeling like there was a place that I could feel wanted and included. We didn't agree or see eye to eye on everything, and I felt that some listened more than others. But what I was most excited about and most proud of, that as I left that meeting, they shared with me that for the first time, we would be promoting a woman to the senior leadership team. And I thought, finally, we have a voice and a seat at the table.
We do not have to romanticize our past in order to be aware of how it seeds our present. Audre Lorde. Star Robinson, an African-American woman and CEO of True Star Power is Knowledge, LLC, will tell a story titled 3 Times I Considered Suicide. She has long dark braids and is wearing a black t-shirt with beige lettering that reads, lightly melanated, hella black. She's standing in front of a rust brown gate.
There are 3 times in my life that I considered taking my life. The first time, I was 12 years old. In 7th grade, I had decided to change my math grade from an F to a B. In 7th grade, got an F, didn't know what I was going to do. And then I remembered my cousin had told me about this trick where he had changed his F to a B. We got carbon report cards back then. So just with a pencil. He told me, get a pencil star, write it in light, then take the carbon paper and rub it over it, and good to go. Perfect. So I changed my grade. I present this beautiful report card and this beautiful B in math to my mother, who knows, like I know, that math has never been my favorite subject, or one that I was all that good at. So she's elated. She's praising me. Good job, baby. I can't believe it. I can't either. Right? But I've done it. Presented it to her. Here we are. Then my conscience kind of got the best of me. And the next day I'm standing in the mirror in our bathroom and I'm crying my eyes out. And I'm thinking, what kind of daughter are you, Star? That you would deceive your mother and lie like this. The second time I considered taking my life, I was 28 years old. I had just had my second child. Now, my first child, my doctors talked to me about postpartum. It didn't quite go that way at first time. But the second time, I've got two babies now, a year and a half apart, in diapers, 2 diaper bags, double stroller, 2 car seats. I am out of my mind. I didn't know what exactly was wrong with me. I couldn't articulate that. I just knew that something was wrong. And again, my doctors had talked to me about postpartum depression both times. And I was, kind of looked at them and I remember thinking, now, I'm Black, right? Those are not problems that anybody that I know that's in my family and that has prepared me with all this beautiful advice for motherhood has talked to me about postpartum depression. I'm driving one day in my truck. I'm on the freeway and I've got to get off on this exit. And it veers off kind of to the right. But right directly in front of me is a brick building, a big brick building. I'm going about 60 miles per hour even as I get ready to veer off. And all I'm thinking about is, I'm doing it. I'm driving into that wall. Right now, I'm driving into that wall. With everything in me, I thought that's what I was about to do. And then something in me made me look up in my rearview mirror, and I looked up in my rearview mirror. And my babies was in the back seat. I said, damn. I said, see, I can't even kill myself because of y'all. Love has saved me. The third time, I decided to take my life. 10 years later, I'm 38, going through one of the most difficult times in my life. Divorce after 13 years and 3 babies. A custody battle. My kids, custody battle, yes. Relocated back home to Anderson, Indiana. I hadn't been there since I was 18 years old. I left at 18 and I never returned. Now I'm back home. While I'm there, I get diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. So all this is going on at the same time. Divorce, custody battle, relocated because I didn't have a job or a place to live. I gotta go to my mom's house. Now I'm there and find out I have stage 3 breast cancer. Oh my gosh. What am I going to do? Well, spring comes. So here it is again, spring, y'all. Something about spring. Spring comes. And I've persevered, right? At the end of cancer, I've made it. I've had the double vasectomy, the reconstruction, right? I'm on my way to trial to get my babies, and I'm for sure going to get them. So to beat cancer, divorce is about to be over. I'm actually in LA. I'm ready to do my thing, doing this a storytelling event. And I'm in Silver Lake, Los Angeles. And I'm staying in this beautiful home up in the mountains. You have to drive up to the mountain, literally. We're there some days, some nights. Every night so far that I'm there, I'm going out on this balcony. There's these double doors in the room I'm in. I can go right out to the balcony. I'm looking. There's the lake. There's the stars. I am reflecting. It's great. So one night, I woke up, looked up, and never before had the commitment to end my life being so strong and so real as it was that night. So I swaddled myself in the covers. Got in real tight because I just knew, that if I stood up, that I was going to walk onto that balcony and jump off. Everything in me said, jump off that balcony, Star. So I unswaddled myself, rolled out of bed to the floor, boom, crawl the little 3 feet to the restroom, grab my phone because I know that I am going to need an intervention. I'm going to need an intervention. Grab my phone, lock myself in the restroom, and I'm crying and I'm thinking, who am I going to call? Who am I going to call? Who am I going to call? I thought about my friend Jenny because she was overseas, I want to say in Dubai, and it was 12-hour difference, so I knew she'd be up. I text her on WhatsApp. I said, I need you right now. What are you doing? I need you right now. She called me immediately. Called me from Dubai. Called me. What's going on, Star? And I'm telling her, Jenny, this is it. I don't want to do. I'm tired. I am tired. I am tired of being tired. And she said to me, Star, you are at the beginning of the most beautiful part of your life. Look at where you've come from, what you have persevered through. You're almost there. You can't do this. So I heard, I'm listening to her, I'm still crying. Oh my God, I don't know. And then she said something to me that was both simple, both funny and profound. She said, quit being a punk. Get your ass up off that floor. Quit being a punk. Get your punk ass up. And I said, what you calling a punk? And that done it. And that was enough. It snapped me right out of it. Just enough that I was able to get up. Now, I ain't going nowhere near that balcony. The rest of the time I was there. To walk into the room I was in, you had to walk past the balcony. When I walked in the room, I was on the door, on the walls, trying to stay away from that balcony. So I finally, my last night, I said, you know what, Star, I'm going, right? Well, I didn't go that night. It was nighttime. I was too afraid. So I waited till the morning and went that day. In the daytime, I decided, okay, I'll walk in there. I'm at the balcony, not the sliding doors. Whew, you're going to go out there. So I open them. I step out. Like, okay, you out here, that's good. I sit down, that's good. Then I said, no, Star, you got to go to the edge. You got to go to the edge. Go to the edge. So I walk to the edge. Woo, and I'm nervous. I'm looking out, and there's the lake and the trees. Woo. So I go ahead, and I get to the edge, and I look down. I said, what? Oh, shit, I be damn. It ain't but 2 stories down. 2 stories down. I couldn't believe it. Now, had I jumped, I would have had to I'd explain why I'm in the ER, not ICU. Why my dumb ass then jumped off a 2-story balcony. Right? I was so tickled, and I just thought, God knew. God knew, because I was committed to this. And God knew. If she jumped, she only gonna be injured. So I'm just so grateful, but I was so tickled, and I still am, at the 2 stories. Because had I jumped, I would have landed on ground. I'd have been injured, maybe a broke ankle, hurt myself, some bruises. But I would have had to be Superman to actually kill myself. I would have had to fly through bushes and trees to get to where I had a drop off to actually kill myself. And again, love saved me. Love saved me. And it was just imperative to me to be able to share this story, because the love that saved me is the love that still saved me. And I love my strong, beautiful Black women, all of the women that helped me get exactly where I am.
It's easier to control a victim than a healed, evolved person. Gabrielle Union. Marsha Maddox, an African-American woman and artist owner of Maddox Life Consulting, will tell a story titled, How to Fix a Broken Heart. She is surrounded by tall trees on a nature trail. She is wearing a pink and green head wrap and a green blouse.
November 1989, my 4th semester at Howard University. I was living my best life. Me and my 2 best girlfriends, we all hated living at home and we loved dancing. Now, I didn't like living at home. My father died when I was 3. And for me, love left the house. So being at Howard and away from home, I was never going back. I got a call. The dean summoned me to his office. It was my mom. Aunt Ruby was not doing well. The whole family was going to Savannah. When we got down to Georgia, there were a lot of people in the house over the course of the next few days, going in and out of Aunt Ruby's bedroom and her personal things and rifling through her treasures and trinkets and marveling over things. And I took notice that this was upsetting my mom because she had gone down to Savannah to take care of Aunt Ruby 2 months out of every year of my life. And for her to be down there and these people thinking about what they can get, and she's sitting there praying for Aunt Ruby, it broke her heart. In fact, I think that's the reason she got sick, because she ended up in the ICU. I don't even remember going to Aunt Ruby's funeral. My mom had to stay a month in the hospital, and I stayed every night with her. So this was the beginning of a long journey. We had to stay in Savannah another month until she was able to travel. But once she was, we were able to go back to New York. But before then, I had to go pack up all my stuff at Howard, say bye to my girlfriends, pack up 10 suitcases, a trunk, and my sewing machine. Being at home with mom was not going to be an easy journey. But when we got there, we went back and forth to the doctor. And I remember one day, one of the doctors said to me, I want to examine you. You don't look good. So he checked my heart and he thought it was an irregular heartbeat and sent me to the cardiologist. They did an ultrasound and he showed me on the ultrasound screen, but he showed me with his hands as well. And that was so memorable to me. He said, your valve is moving like this. Well, it should move like this, but yours is moving like that. And it was so clear that it was a broken heart, literally. I never got sick. So over the next few days, I remember praying over my body. We did some exercises at the YMCA when I was a kid. And we would look at our aura and pray over our body. And during this time, a voice said to me, don't begrudge your mother even a glass of water. And that struck me as an opportunity to make up for being a rotten teenager. I mean, I wasn't that bad. I was a 5%er. I was an earth, but I would always tell my mom what to do. I was so sassy, telling her she can't eat pork and what she should cook and what she should do. And here we are at home, and now we have the same diet. Neither one of us ate pork, and she had to cut down on her salt. So that was the beginning of that long journey. But when I went back to the doctor, he showed me that the ultrasound showed my valve was working perfectly. And I said, wow, just loving on my mom and rubbing on her feet and not begrudging her even a glass of water actually proved that your thoughts and your actions do affect your health. So over the next 3 years, my mom did transition But I make sure that my friends repair their relationships with their parents, and I encourage them to not let their parent leave this place with a broken relationship, because you will be the one with a broken heart. So don't begrudge your parent even a glass of water.
You can't put the past behind you. It's buried in you. Claudia Rankine. Ade, an African-American woman and owner of Dunu Cuisine, will tell a story titled From West Africa to East Coast America, an adoption narrative. She is wearing a yellow dress with a white and yellow head wrap. She is seated on a pier with water and trees in the background.
This is Benin in West Africa, and I am 10 years old. I always had 3 meals a day with my family at our dining room table. My mother would wake me up in the morning, have a spread for breakfast, and send me off to school. I'd come back at lunchtime and have lunch with my family yet again. I would go back to school, walk back home, have have dinner at the table with my family again. And so it's something that I've always cherished. And on this particular day, I started my day the same way, except this time I had finals. And my father, who was such a militant man, really made sure that we took school very seriously. And so you can imagine my excitement on my walk back home to let him know that I've passed. So I take my regular route. I walk through the marketplace. I see all my aunties with their spread of goods that I'm sure they had spent all morning making. It was such a beautiful day. The sun was shining and, kissed us all so gently. And I got lost in it. And before I knew it, I was home. And so I'm now in front of our black gate. I open it. I walk onto the cement floor. And to my left is a mango tree. And, this tree gifted us every year just the gift of the sweetest mangoes. I still remember the taste. And so now I'm walking up the terrace and our living room doors are open and I see my mother directly across from me. She's on our yellow rotary phone. I still remember the phone number. It's that thing that you got to move like this. 22 47 63. I have to say it in French because that's how I remember it. And so we locked eyes for just a moment and I couldn't help but feel that that conversation was about me. So she quickly just turned away from me and I went on about my business. And at the dinner table, a place I loved so much and spent so much time, my mother then tells me I was to be adopted and I would be going to America. So about a month or two later, I find myself on a plane. So here I am on this adventure, looking out the window in awe of the clouds, how they just glide. I mean, I'd never been on a plane before, so this was quite the experience for me. I've always heard of this wonder that is America, and I get to experience that now. And so after what felt like forever of a flight, finally land and come out the airport and get into the car. And we're now driving from New York to Connecticut. And I'm again looking out the window and seeing what's all around me. It was so different. It's so different, not like what I remember from Africa. And, you know, I see the tall trees and the sun rays kind of trying to peek through them leaves a little bit, but it still wasn't the same. And so as we take that left onto Lakewood Drive, I see what is now to be my new home. And I take a deep breath and I'm like, Ade, you made it. You're here. And so days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months. And I am now starting school. And my first day of school, I walk into Mrs. Ferrari's 5th grade classroom. I'm wearing a white t-shirt and purple overalls, and my hair was in Senegalese twist down to my back. And I'm looking like, wow, these people do not look like me. And I'm scared. I don't speak the language. How am I even supposed to like get an education? I didn't even know where to start or what to even think. And so that same day, though, I met my angel from above, I like to call her, Mrs. Tui, who was my ESL teacher. And that just means she is the English as a second language teacher. And that started a beautiful relationship for me. I'm always amazed by her and by any teacher, and specifically one who is an ESL teacher, because you're in a room full of children from all different countries that speak all different languages. And here you are, you only speak English. And how do you communicate with these children? How do you even begin to teach them this new language and this new culture that they're now a part of? And I remember when I walked in, she was telling me to sit down. I mean, I only knew how to say I love you, so I didn't know what she meant. She kept looking at me and I was looking at her. I'm like, finally, she's like this, sit down. And I sit, and somehow she managed to teach me how to speak English. And I loved being there with her. She was so gentle and she was so patient and kind. And I never wanted to leave, actually. I dreaded going home. You know, most of my childhood, I felt like my heart was beating through the soles of my feet. It wasn't the same. It was incredibly lonely. That vivid memory I have of eating in a communal style with my family 3 times a day in Benin was not what I was met with here. It was, hey, you eat cereal in the morning, make sure you catch that bus, eat whatever they give you as an option in the cafeteria. And then when you get home and your homework was done, then you can eat in the breakfast room table, whatever was made. And so I felt like so much was taken away from me. I didn't have that same joy I had as a little girl at home. And I spent a lot of my time wondering why it was that my parents would send me here. I wondered so much what that decision was. And so at 17 years old, I graduated and I left to go find myself, as some may say. And I start working at this hotel called The Study, which is a hotel in New Haven, Connecticut. And so this hotel had a restaurant called Heirloom. This restaurant served farm-to-table food. That meant that you ate well. That meant that food was fresh and good for you. And I was introduced to a new concept then. You know, my perception of food started to change. I was like, well, wow, food is more than this thing that you eat. It's more than an edible. It became for me an evolving yet traditional canvas that you can use to share your history with the world. And through that came the logic of me using food to share that story of that young girl who, through no choice of her own, left her home at 10 years of age, grew in a foreign place, but never forgot where she came from, endured so much, but never wavered. And so I have made it my mission to bring all those experiences together and serve it to you on a plate.
We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Pastor Robert Parrish, an African-American man and board member for Arts Access, will tell a story titled, Mama Knows Best, Even When It Hurts. He is wearing a light blue button-down shirt and is seated on the edge of a dry fountain on the campus of the Governor Moorhead School for the Blind.
I was born in the year 1959 in Bryson City, North Carolina. I was born with congenital glaucoma and other eye conditions. In fact, I was totally blind. Well, there was one day when I was looking at a light, and one of my relatives said to my mother, "Hey, Peggy, that boy can see." So realizing that I could actually see light, at least an image, they rushed me to a doctor who opened up my pupil. This is the reason why I have sight today. Well, I lived life as normal in Bryson City. I played with the kids and relatives and went to church and went to picnics and so forth. I remember my first birthday party. I was fascinated with colored ice cubes for some reason. And my mother served me ice cubes that were green. I was thrilled. Well, soon after that party, I must have been around 5. Things changed drastically. I remember a long car ride from Bryson City to Raleigh, where I entered the Governor Moorhead School for the Blind. This was in 1965. Back then, the Governor Moorhead School for the Blind was segregated. I was entered into the Black campus, where we got meat maybe once a week, whereas the white school got meat much more often. Well, I remember sitting on some steps in front of the cottage that I was to sleep in, that my mother and I were talking, maybe with some other people, but all of a sudden, Mama wasn't there. Well, I just got up, and rambunctiously ran out and found some other kids to play with, got into a fight with maybe a bully, perhaps it was a bully, named Johnny. Johnny must have been about 8. Well, after that fight, we made up and, resumed as just being normal kids. And, but where was Mama? And I was soon put aside by Miss Etheridge, and she said, "Your mother's gone. We're here with you now." I was devastated. I remember deep inside that I must have cried for months on end. But Miss Etheridge said to me that I'm going to be with you, nurture you. You're going to be properly trained to dress yourself and learn to eat and do those things that normal people do. Well, true to her word, she and other house parents did nurture me and made sure I got to meals on time and to class on time. I remember another house parent named Miss Miller, who taught me how to tie my shoes. She took this wooden shoe and taught me how to lace and tie a bow. Miss Etheridge, along with other house parents, also took me home on occasion. You see, I couldn't go home to Bryson City like other kids got to go to their homes every weekend, because Bryson City was over 300 miles away. And so on holidays like Easter, Miss Etheridge took me to her home, where I remember watching my first football game. And that was very special to me. And I think I've liked football ever since. Well, in kindergarten, I learned to play with blocks, learned my letters, maybe learned some Braille letters back then as well in kindergarten. I eventually learned how to read Braille, and I became an avid reader of the Bible. Well, as I grew into the surroundings of the school, and as the school became more family to me, I excelled, made good grades. I did well extracurricularly as well, ran track and field, for instance. And man, did we have a track team and a half. We won several tournaments of the blind. You see, and back in that day, there was blind schools in every state. Well, we were a part of the Eastern Association, Eastern Athletic Association of the Blind. And we won like, 4 or 5 championships. And I've got the gold medals to prove it. There was another time pivotal to my school career here at Governor Moorhead that I met a guy named Ronald. Now, Ronald was the local preacher, if you will. He was well respected, to the point that one Easter, the cafeteria workers who could not go to their own worship service asked if Ronald would go in the kitchen and preach to them. Ronald asked me to come along with him. Remember, I was an avid Bible reader. And Ronald preached one of the best sermons I ever heard, and the people were moved. But Ronald soon left the school, and people were wondering, well, who's going to take Ronald's place? Well, you know what the saying is, never send for whom the bell tolls. So me and this guy named Sam became instrumental in providing ministry for the school. We gave devotionals. We started Bible studies throughout the campus. We even played a bingo game called Faith, which taught people Bible trivia. It was like a simulated bingo game. Well, upon graduating from the Governor Moorhead School, I entered Appalachian State Go Mountaineers and got an undergraduate degree in speech communications and a minor in psychology, and went on to seminary where I got my MDiv, got it at Southeastern Seminary in Wake Forest. And from there, I entered clinical pastoral education. I trained at the University of North Carolina for my first year of residency. And my second year of residency, I trained at a hospital in Texas. Well, during that residency training as a chaplain, I did what was required. I took, I was required to do therapy. And one of my therapists said to me, Robert, I see that you're wondering about your mother not saying goodbye. Why don't you ask her about it? And so one day in Bryson City, I did. And my mother told me, she says, yes, I did say goodbye to you, but because we were urged not to linger, I had to leave quickly. It made sense to me. And that was a very cathartic moment. Upon completion of my training as a chaplain, I did look for jobs in hospitals, but, they were beginning not to hire chaplains as they could just use residents. So I looked for jobs at the Governor Moorhead School, and I got a job to be a house parent. And I eventually became a teacher's aide, and I eventually became certified to teach blind students special ed, and I taught it for several years. But I go back to being a house parent, where I took in 6-year-old kids, took in kids like Daniel, and Daniel was bewildered and wondered, what's going on? Hey, where's my mother or father? I feel lost. I feel hurt, abandoned. But I took Daniel aside and I says, Daniel, I am here. I will be your parent away from home. No, I can't replace your mother or father, but I will be your support away from home. We're going to nurture you, love you as our own. You're going to learn how to dress yourself. You're going to learn how to eat, wash clothes. You're going to be the best person you can be. Now, while people call my mother a bad mom for placing me in the school for the blind, I think that's the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And my students are living proof as they're now contributing to society.
When things people have said stuck like glue. Pastor Lisa Yeboah. Ian Parks, an African-American man and president of the nonprofit organization Teens Have a Voice Too, will tell a story titled, The Day My Dream Was Crushed. He is seated on top of a table in the park, wearing a black baseball cap, a black t-shirt, and white shorts with dark sunshades.
Have you ever had your dreams crushed before? See, I grew up as a military kid because I was born to a father who was in the Army. Never knowing what stability felt like because we always went from place to place and state to state. But by the age of 8, I made a discovery. One of the things that I discovered was my first love. And the type of love that I had for this game was the same type of love that you have for your favorite meal. The game that I'm talking about that I love was basketball, and playing it just brought me the most joy that I ever had in my life. Still moving from place to place and state to state, I now had a little bit of stability. Because of my love for this game, I was able to take it with me. But then I had a day of reckoning come. My dad was getting ready to retire from the military, and we were getting ready to move to North Carolina. Not knowing what to expect from North Carolina, I just knew I was going to be able to take basketball with me. And the day comes, and I'm here, arrive, waiting for this new experience to happen. One of the things that I discovered upon my arrival to North Carolina was the love that other people had for the same game that I had. But their love was on a different level. Their love was damn near insane, and I could not relate at first. By this time, I'm in 8th grade when we moved to North Carolina. And in 9th grade, I decided I want to take my relationship with basketball a step further. See, I was a above average height, skinny kid, but I was very competitive on the court. Why I wanted to take my passion of basketball to the next level was because I wanted to match that same intensity that other people have for this game. So I try out when I'm in high school, and the first cuts, it was a little bit overwhelming, but I made it. One of the big things that I noticed was the amount of people that was at the basketball court at the same time. Not knowing how to deal with that at first, I came out a little nervous, but I made it through. Then upon the second cuts, we're doing more drills, being a little bit more precise. We're doing passing drills, we're doing shooting drills, doing layup drills and defensive drills. But I also make it past the second cuts as well. Now, after the second cuts, the crowd gets a little bit smaller. We're still doing the same drills, but we have to be a little bit more precise and we have to pay a little bit more attention to detail. Now, after this last cuts, I didn't make the team. Though I was disappointed, I did realize that I had more opportunities to go. Because this is my first time trying out. I'm just a freshman, but high school lasts for 4 years. The next year comes around. I try out again. But guess what? I make it past the first cuts. I make it past the second cuts. But I have the same result as the first year. Then one day I'm sitting at the dinner table, and as I'm thinking out loud, I say to myself, I can't wait to play in the NBA one day. As I make that statement is followed by a comment from my mom saying, how you gonna make it to the NBA if you can't even make a basketball team? After that comment follows laughter, and then my brother decides to chime in and say, dude, it's never gonna happen. You might as well kill that dream. And then more laughter comes after that. See, I never knew how deep that pain would hit me that day, but I do know that pain was also met with anger. And then next year comes around, I decide to try out again. But the only thing about this time around was I end up with the same result, but I actually throw in the towel this time. And the reason why I throw in the towel this time around is because I'm still hearing that laughter in the background. The laughter that I have in the background is my mom laughing, my dad laughing, and my brother laughing, and I still hear those same words. You're never gonna make the basketball team. So fast forward, I get out to high school and I enlist in the military. When I enroll in the military, it's a new experience for me, but one of the things that I loved doing was volunteering. And upon volunteerism that I did in the military, I did a lot of things involving the youth. One thing that I learned about my volunteer work that I did was I actually had a passion for the youth. But at the same time, I discovered another passion. I also got another opportunity to try out for the basketball team. See, the base that I was stationed at was having trials for a basketball team, and I decided to give it another run. But the only difference this time is I actually make the team. And now I'm actually living part of the dream that I thought I would have. But this is a whole nother journey because now I'm practicing. We're doing a whole bunch of conditioning work. I'm lifting weights. I'm focused on my nutrition. And this is all before our season even starts. And then our season comes around, and the first game we play this Division III college. And one of my biggest takeaways from that game was, wow, I can actually hang with those guys. I ended up scoring around 6 or 7 points during this game. But another huge takeaway was I might not have been able to play in college. In the pros, but I know for damn sure I could play in college. Another huge takeaway was looking at my work ethic. And the work ethic that I had was the one thing that I know I didn't do while I was in high school. See, one thing I realized in life was if you really want something, you really got to work at it and make it happen. Because sometimes, regardless of what people tell you, it still starts and ends with you. So although I didn't make it to the NBA, I did discover that I had another passion. And the other passion that I have is I love the youth. I love working with the youth. And I have now started a nonprofit organization that's focused on helping the youth. But one thing that I still keep in the back of my mind is not letting the dreams of that youth get crushed like the dreams that I had get crushed.
Being around Black people is like watching a foreign film without translation. Claudia Rankin. Ghazi Muhammad, an African-American man, an empowerment coach and founder of Felon 2.0, will tell a story titled The Bounce Back. He is wearing a red sweatshirt with a black baseball cap with red lettering. He is walking as he shares his story.
You know, years ago, when I came home from prison, it was rough. You know, I came out, trying to get a job, and it was kind of rough because no one want to hire you when you have a lot of felonies. And I didn't have a lot of practical work experience because I went to prison at such a young age, still in high school. But I did get a job at this one particular place in St. Louis that was a subsidiary of Peevely. It was an ice cream packing plant. And every time a felon get to that part in the application where it say, have you ever been convicted of a felony? At that point, your heart starts beating fast, your hands start sweating. You don't know really what to say at that point. So I do what every other felon do, no. No, I ain't never been convicted of no felony. Because in your mind, you know that if you say yes, they're not gonna hire you. They're not gonna even give you a chance. So you lie and say no. Most of us lie on the application. So I put no on the application. I wound up getting hired, and I was there maybe 3 or 4 months. I went above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that what I was doing was proficient enough to keep me on, to hire me on permanently. My immediate supervisors, they loved what I was doing. They said that you're doing an excellent job, that your work ethic is superior. And one day I was doing, packing my ice cream, and one of the supervisors came and said they want to see you up in HR. So I'm thinking like they finna give me a raise. I'm already making $14 an hour. I'm thinking they finna give me a raise up to $16.85. I'm like, yes. I just had my son. I'm like, man, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make some real good money here. It's back in the 90s, $16 an hour was some good money. It's some good money right now. And but they called me in HR, and the lady sent me down. She said, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm fine, ma'am. But she said, I talked to the supervisors, and they say that you're an excellent employee. You're doing an excellent job. You go above and beyond the call of duty to make sure your work is done and completed in a timely manner. You are very helpful towards other employees. She said, however, we just did a background check on you and found out you've been to prison, and we're gonna have to let you go. And I looked at this lady, and my eyes watered. I'm thinking I'm here to get a raise, and she finna fire me. And I looked at her, I said, you finna fire me? You finna let me go? She said, I'm sorry, sir, that's our policy. Man, I was angry. And I said to the lady, which I shouldn't have said, but this is what I said to her. I say, you see, I came out here really trying to live according to society laws and to be upright and to be civilized and to do things right. But you ain't giving me a chance. You judged me by something I did when I was a juvenile. I say, see, I'll be the kind of young guy that will rob your ass when you get off work. I'll take everything you got. And when I said that, she started pushing buttons, getting on the cell phone, on the telephone, and security came, and security literally escorted me up out of this place. I was angry as hell because I wanted to do something right, and I couldn't. Now, at this point right here, I go home. I'm heated. Just had my son. My first son was just born, and I'm heated. I'm infuriated. And the only thing that went through my mind was to hell with the system. It's on. I'm getting that gun back in my hand. I'm taking everything I can get my hands on. We're gonna hustle. We're gonna deal with the drugs. I'm robbing people. I'm doing everything criminal I know how to do. I'm gonna do it like that now because the system won't let me win legitimately. And I go home with this thought in my mind. And my son was a baby boy. He was crying when I got home. And I picked my son up. And this was the bounce back for me. I looked at my son. He looked up at me with them little pretty eyes. And I said, man, I can't go back like that now. I can't afford to do that. Not just for me, but for him. It's somebody bigger than me I have to live for. I have to live for him now. It ain't all about me right now. It's about him now. As I held my son, there was a newspaper on my table. And I looked at this newspaper, and it said a job, a wanted ad for a gang task force coordinator. And I looked down at that paper as I held my son. I'm looking at the description, And they were saying you had to have a bachelor's degree or equivalent experience and all that. And I didn't have none of that kind of stuff. But I said I knew how to work with young brothers though, because I was a young brother in the streets and got locked up and dealt with the drugs and the guns and the gangs, and so I decided to put in my little application. And I go to this place right here. It was called St. Louis Caring Communities. And when I was there doing the interview, I was really intimidated. It was about 7 or 8 other applicants there, and they all had their portfolios and they had their nice resumes. And I was looking around, and they had their little shirt and ties on, and I had a shirt that was too big for me, that was hanging down, that I had just got from a thrift store. But I wanted to look good and go on a nice interview, and my shirt didn't even fit my neck; it was hanging down with my little tie on. But these guys were looking immaculate. They had their little resumes. I'm like, man, I can't be up here. They ain't gonna hire me. Look at these guys. They got everything. I ain't got none of this. So by the time we get to the interview, it was like it was 2 other guys before me, like 4 or 5 before me. When I get in the interview, the man get to talking. I say, look, man, I'm gonna tell you straight up. I've been to prison. I got 8 felonies, and I don't know if that's gonna hinder me, but I don't want to go through no more like lying and that. I've been to prison. I don't have no bachelor's degree, but I know how to work with these young guys. I went to prison when I was 16 years old. I know how to work with these young guys. I worked with them when I was in prison. That was me. And the guy looked at my application. I didn't have a lot of work experience on that because I haven't had a job, and I sure wasn't going to put my previous job on there. They just escorted me out with security. I wasn't putting that on the resume. That wasn't going nowhere near the resume. Matter of fact, I didn't even work that in my mind and in his mind. That was non-existent. So after about a week, they called me back. And everybody say, man, when they call you back for a second interview, that means they like you. That means they want you. And I go in there, with the same big shirt on. And the guy say, look, I think you'll be an excellent addition to our team. He said the other members of the task force, these guys been to college, they got degrees, but none of them been in the streets. None of them been to prison. None of them live that kind of life that you live. And I think you would be an excellent addition to this team right here. So I say, man, this is a beautiful thing. And this job's paying $16 an hour. So I wound up getting $16 an hour anyway. And then, so what happened was, in this company, they put me in the worst high school, one of the worst high schools in the city of St. Louis. Beaumont High School at that time is one of the worst high schools in the city of St. Louis. And after about 1 month, I had my own office. I had developed such a strong rapport with so many of these young brothers here, because I didn't come at them like an authoritative figure. I didn't come at them like I was the police, like I was superior to them. I came at them like I was one of y'all. Like, y'all my little homies. Like, these are my little brothers. And I would catch them shooting dice in the bathroom. I would just take their dice from them. I would catch them out there putting their little weed in the bathroom. I would take their weed and flush it down the toilet. I wouldn't call the police on them. Some of them even had weapons. I would take their weapon from them, wrap it up, and say, not on my watch. Not right now. You ain't gonna have that on the school ground. I'll give it to you after school, after you leave, but not right now. You cannot have that right now on school grounds. And I developed a strong rapport with these young guys. And it was this point in my life that really started the journey of my life into social service, into really serving the community. It was at this point where I started believing that even my story, what I had been through, can have its place somewhere. It may not reach everybody. It may not be for all platforms, but there's value somewhere. No matter what we experience, I really learned that the baggage that I had, somebody can take that baggage and put some of their belongings in it and carry their load a little bit easier, because I came with a whole lot of bags. And all the crap you got, we just loaded up in the bag. When it was at that point, I really started believing that even my story had value. And that was a great bounce back for me.
Final thoughts by event producer Alexus Rhone. A former slave trader would have a religious conversion and write a poem that would eventually be set to music and sung around the world in congregations everywhere. One of the lines in that poem says, "Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come, and grace will lead me home." Absolutely. And then a couple of hundred years after that, the descendant of a slave would write a poem that would reflect all of the ways in which African Americans have experienced such heartache and yet have been resilient. And I believe that part of the resilience is because of the poem that she penned, where she says, "When I am tempted to doubt myself and question my gifts and experiences, remind me, O God, of all that I know. and of those things that I don't know that I know. Remind me of who I am and whose I am, even when I hide behind my piety to avoid doing what must be done and use you as an excuse for my indecision, for my lack of action, and for silencing my own self. Love me enough, oh God, to lift the lid off my basket and order me to stop crouching in the dark like a woman without a God. Resilience and amazing grace, the hope chest for all of humanity. I am confident that with that, we're going to be all right eventually. Blessings to you. Thanks for watching.
Woohoo! I was watching all of your wonderful comments online, all of the ways that y'all seem to be really taking to the stories. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am, yeah, you know, my preference is live events. My preference is with us gathering. But in the private chat behind the stage, we were talking about how it's one way, you know, so I sent the link to the storytellers earlier this week. And so it's one, you have one feeling when you are sort of listening to them on your own. But when we gather together as a community to watch these stories together and to chime in, there's a whole different energy. And so I had said to them, like, I can't even wait for you to see how phenomenal it is when we get together in person. Like I'm hoping that I've been praying for the scientists to give us some solutions, because I miss y'all. I miss the communal gathering. And I appreciate that even in this season, with what we're dealing with right now, the stories must continue to carry, and we must continue to tell them, and the show must go on. Okay, so now I have 4 of our storytellers that I want to bring in. I'm going to bring them in one at a time. And the first one is Star Robinson. And Star, let me get Star in. Uh-oh, can we get Star in? No, there we go. Hey, beautiful one. Uh-oh, I'm getting some static. Okay, hang on. You hear that static? I don't. Uh-oh, hold on. Let me mute your mic for a minute. Oh. Okay, well, while Star is like figuring out the whole mic situation, her story about Black women and mental health is extremely profound. She is someone who has been very active with, you know, me and different storytelling sets. And Star, there's something going on with your. I'm hearing that crinkle. Do you hear that, Star? There's something with your mic. I don't know what that is. Do you have a headset that you can put in?
I believe so.
Let me.
It went away.
It went away. Okay.
Oh, it's back.
Okay. Okay. I tell you what. We're gonna come back to you. Can we go to Ade? I'm gonna pull Ade in. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Beautiful person. I know that you were like. I know you live ready. Like you were ready for it. You already knew what was coming. I tell you, Ade, the very first time you shared that story with me when we were workshopping it, one of the things that I thought was so profound was how people assume that if you are if you're part of an international adoption, if you are from, a country in Africa, that to come to America is like a blessing. And what I thought was so profound was how it never occurred to me that a child would be adopted away from the wholeness and the love and the community that you were part of. Like, you had an amazing community that you were with, an amazing family, and yet somebody said America, and you're like, ooh, let's do that. So talk to me about, give us the background or the backstory on international adoptions and kind of that whole experience, the false perception of international.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of times what happens is with children who are adopted, just generally, there's this sense of gratitude that they're meant to feel because at least you're not in that other situation anymore. But I think that's all a question of perception and how you choose to define what happiness means to you or wholeness means to you. And the things that I cherished growing up in my country were the fact that I had a father, I had a mother, I had siblings, and like I described, I remember these very specific things that were very near and dear to me. And that connection was then lost as I came over here. And it really was something that, you know, put a hole inside my heart. And I think that we should, rather than say, oh, let's adopt children from Africa all the time, I think maybe we should change that narrative a little bit to figure out how can we change the circumstance, because every child deserves to be nurtured in the culture in the country in which they are born into, which gets lost when they're taken out of that. And I think the question should change a little bit.
I love that. I love that, finding a way to support where they are, as opposed to, quote, removing them and giving them a, quote, what you perceive a better situation. Because I tell you, when you talked about the food spread and even coming home for lunch and the spread that was there, and then coming to, you know, to America, where you have to have cereal for breakfast, my heart broke. I was like, wait, this is not a good thing. This is not a good fix. And yet you're thriving. But there's still that sense of like, okay, ooh, that was a loss.
Yeah, it definitely felt like that for me. Not that I'm not happy to have been here and, you know, experienced this, made me who I am today. But it's still very important to keep that identity. And it's something that I hope, you know, for all parents who adopt children that are from a different culture, I really hope that they take it on themselves to learn about that child's culture and to include that in them raising them.
And what was beautiful also about your story, even with you with Dunu cuisine, it's like that whole concept of food and community. Like you have taken that concept from a beautiful time in your formative years, and you are giving that to the rest of us. That is so profound.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
And one of the things that I'm missing, even in terms of like what COVID not allowing us to gather, is the treat of one of your village functions. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So we had been, Alexus and I have been working on putting together an event. So really what my business does, we do catering and, you know, we offer personal chef services, but more than anything, we curate events that are rooted in authentic West African culture that helps us to share what that is with the world through food, music, and art. And so we were working on the village, which was going to include really an immersive experience of what being at home is like. And when I say home, I mean in Africa. And from start to finish, we were going to take you through what dining with us is like, or if we were in the village in the community sense, what that looks like with music and art involved in it. And I, like you said, I'm really hoping that this will be over really soon, because I've done some classes online and it's not the same. I need to see people. I need to hug people. I need to touch people. It's really different.
Very good. Okay, well, don't go anywhere. Let me bring Star back up. Is her equipment back? Let me see. Star. Can we pull Star in? There we go, sunshine. Okay.
Hi.
Oh my God, girl, that crackling. I was like, ah!
I know. We got it working. I got me some headphones. We're good.
Wow. You know what? I love every story that you tell. I was in the back area with the production assistant talking about how you and I were telling stories on Santa Monica Beach years ago. and how we got sunburned and how we thought that the clouds were going to protect us from the sun, and it didn't. But the lasting memory is both the sunburn and the laughter and all of the stories that we shared. And I appreciate that you were so open and vulnerable in talking about Black women and mental health, and how you were able to take a story about the 3 times that you considered suicide and make it compelling and even funny, but to show kind of what all of those layers look like. What do you have to, what else do you have to say about Black women and mental health from your experience?
I just think that it's so important for us to be able to talk about it out loud. For us to be able to have a community in which it's discussed. Because as I shared in my story, in all of my training as a Black woman, and my mom was phenomenal in her training and surrounded me with women like her in my training of becoming a woman in general, but a Black woman, most definitely. And none of it ever was around mental health. None of it was around how you're going to feel after you have your first child, your second child. Like, none of it was around that. And so to have a community of people around you that you can talk about that with, and the importance of having someone to go to, even outside of your family, to share with those emotions and just how you feel. I just think it's important for us to have a psychologist like we have, an OBGYN, like we have a primary care physician, that when something crazy happens in your life, it's normal for you to have a lot of emotions around it and need to be to talk it out. And so I just think it's important for us to be able to heal emotionally, to be able to talk about it.
And I think that one of the things that we also have to do is to fire this whole concept, like in your story, your doctor is trying to tell you, now your doctor is like the professional. It's like, hey, fam, like this whole postpartum thing is a thing. And you're like, hey, fam, I'm a Black woman. That ain't a thing for us. When the truth is like, no, it is. It is. And we've got to be able to fire this idea, this concept that, oh, there are certain things that don't plague us, that plague other groups. Listen to the professionals. They know what they're saying. And he was ultimately, or she, your physician was ultimately about your healing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, she was. And so again, I just think it's so important. And I was so thankful that I had received the message twice, right? Because I had got it the first time and I was okay, I thought the first time. And by the second time, I really, really wasn't even sure how to articulate it, that what was wrong with me. It wasn't until after everything and after talking about it as often as I have that I realized that it was postpartum. And so I was thankful that I knew what was going on to be able to share the story and to be able to share with other women throughout my journey. So many times my friends and different, even people I didn't know would have babies, and I would go to see the baby and someone would take the baby and I would grab them and say, well, how are you? And every time tears. No one even asked them,
how they are
you
That's
feeling?
true.
How are you doing? What's going on with you now that you have this new life that you're responsible for?
That's beautiful, because we know we love them new babies. They so shiny and new and so cute. But we forget it was a process, and it's a process in nurturing them, and how everything becomes about pouring everything you are into that new life. And mommies need to be taken care of too. Okay, all right. So don't go anywhere. If you have questions for Star or Day or any of the storytellers that are coming up, please put them in the comment section, and we're going to post them up live. Let me pull up Ian. Let me get Ian on. Is Ian in the studio? There he goes.
Yeah.
Hey, fam.
How you doing?
I'm good. Great job tonight.
Appreciate it.
What I love about that story, Ian, is how often, we have our important moments crushed, when we're young, and how they carry, even into adulthood. But what I have to say about you is that you are far from the object of pity. But still, so it's like, not to diminish the fact that your dream was crushed. But you're doing all right for yourself. But talk to me about like the issues that come up for you when you are not living your dream.
Well, I think a lot of people might be able to relate to this, but let's just say you work in a job and, you feel drained all the time, not really motivated to be there. You constantly thinking you want to be somewhere else. And especially if you got like a side business or something that you just want to put all your time and effort to, then that's probably a result of that. And a lot of us, we don't realize that our inner circle can literally have a huge effect on our trajectory in life.
Oh, oh, that's a whole word. We need to print that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Our inner circle can have a huge effect on our trajectory in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is powerfully profound. Yeah. Now I do know that part of your inner circle includes Alicia Barbara Troy. Hey, Troy, who got y'all tighten up before we right before we shot your video. But who else would you say is a part of your inner circle that is ensuring that your trajectory is high?
Oh yeah, I would say my best friend Daryl Glover. Got a good friend Mark Albritton, my boy LA, my boy Craig. I definitely got a good circle around me, but you know the crazy thing about it is they're all friends. When it comes to your family,
Yeah, it can be special, which is what's so. And I love that you were bold enough to like say, "Mama like laughed and mocked," and brother was like, "Hey, just let it go," and how it wounded you so deeply that when you went into that next tryout, like it was a wrap.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
And I knew it because I could still hear the chirping in the back of my mind. It was so crazy.
Yeah.
At that point, I didn't think that moment was still going to bother me and just carry with me even till today.
But I love how you have been able to churn that issue, that situation into something that is beautiful and profound for the young people that you work with now. Talk about your work with teens. Teens have a voice too.
Thank you. So one of the things that I like to do with teenagers is I like to create opportunities for them. And what I mean by that is I like to basically just give them more exposure in careers that they're already interested in. Because a lot of times teenagers, they want to go into certain careers, but they don't necessarily know what that real world looks like.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're influenced by maybe their parents or maybe aunt, uncle, or maybe even their friends. So I try to create that opportunity where they're in that space and they can actually see what the day-to-day looks like in that career.
Yeah, yeah. And they can make prudent choices because they have good information.
Yeah. Because I also feel like once they are in that space, they can decide whether they want to continue down that path or go down another path. And depending on the experience I'm able to set up for them, will help them make that decision.
Okay. Thank you, brother, for all that you're doing. Hang on in the studio. Don't leave me. Let me pull up Ghazi. Ghazi. Damn. Oh, how I love thee.
Man, you're my sister.
Listen, that story is one of my absolute favorites. And I got to tell the audience that when I first produced this event live, it was in Arizona. And it was at Herberger Theater, Lunchtime Theater. Shout out to Judy Rollins, the beautiful executive director over there. Hope you're watching, Judy. I miss you. I love you. And Ghazi was one of the featured storytellers. And so I am looking forward to, once we begin to gather in person, Ghazi, you're going to have to come and like tell the story for going to meet the minister.
Oh, okay.
That is a profile. That's one of my favorites. But then I understand that there is a backstory. Like you almost missed this opportunity, even with this with the job opportunity that you were like, nah, like these dudes are looking immaculate. There's there's background on how you were about to leave that interview. You call that staying there long enough. Talk to us about that.
Right. Well, because when I went to the interview, I was looking kind of country. At that time, I didn't really know my like my suit size and none of that, And I remember going to a thrift store, and I remember holding up this suit that looked like it can fit me, so I bought it. I held the shirt up; it looked like it can fit me, so I bought it. The suit, shirt, and shoes probably cost me $10, $15 total, and I bought it because I wanted to, to look nice. The tie was $1. But when I put the suit on, I'm talking about, man, that shirt was so hanging down my neck because it was like 10 times my size. The suit pants was so big, I had to cut a hole in the belt and pull the belt over and put it together. And I was just looking crazy for real. So when I get up into this interview, I see these guys. I mean, they socks matching their ties, and they got watches on, and they got resumes, and I'm thinking like, oh man, I don't have a chance, snowball chance in hell to really get hired in comparison to these guys. So I was really about to leave. And the more they talked among themselves, what college they went to and where they had traveled in the world, I'm like, oh, hell no. I was just about to get up and leave. And as soon as I was going to leave, they say Muhammad. I say, damn. You know, and what it taught me was that sometimes we have opportunities right in front of us. And we don't stay long enough. We meet opposition. We face doubt. We face something about ourselves like feelings of unworthiness, and we leave that right before harvest time. I mean, I was about to leave right before. I had no clue, and that opportunity opened the door for me that lasted over 20 years, and it has started a hell of a trail for me. And had I left there, I ain't telling where I'd be. I'd probably be dead and praying, no telling. You know where I'd be at right now. But I stayed there long enough. You know, I was about to leave in truth, but I stayed long enough to see a sprout. And to see, you know, they call my name. I said, oh, well, okay, I might well do it now. I'm here, you know, and he just opened the door. So he just taught me a valuable lesson. Like sometimes we leave too quick. Sometimes we leave opportunities and circumstances, and sometimes relationships. Sometimes we leave too quick, right when change is about to come.
Yeah. Okay. We just got a question from Brandon Alexander. He wants to he's asking, what made you stay?
Well, I was about to leave. I stayed because in my mind, I'm wrestling with the idea of if I leave, I know I'm going back to the streets. Ain't no doubt about that. I mean, because in my mind, they ain't gonna hire me no way. So I'm finna go back to the streets. I have a son. I'm finna go make me some money. But then as that thought was in my mind, I thought about all the guys that I knew who was murdered as teenagers. I thought about all the guys that I knew that were spending 40, 50, 60 years life in prison. And I didn't want to go down there. I just came home. I'm like, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to go to an early grave. So I'm like wrestling in my brain. It's like God and devil, and you know, go ahead and do it. You know, you can get it. And God saying, nah, boy, I said, you know, it was like I was at war on the inside of my own head for real.
Wow, because I guess even when they called your name, you could have just act like, I don't know who that is. I'm gonna just keep on going.
Yeah.
But something told you, look, just answer the call.
Yeah, I answered the call.
Yeah, you answered the call, and that was great for you. Wow, guys. Like I said, you are absolutely one of my favorite storytellers, and I love that story. You fell down, you didn't stay down. You bounced back. It's a beautiful bounce back.
Let me tell you, you know, it was that story right there led to what I'm doing now, Felon 2.0. So Felon 2.0 is an acronym. So over 20 years, that was 20 years ago, back in the 90s, right? And in the last 20 years, I mean, I've talked to tens of thousands of young people and high schools and colleges and juveniles and prisons, elementary schools across the country, right? They developed mentoring programs. And it took me over 20 years to realize an ugly truth about myself. And that ugly truth was that my greatest prison was not the 6th penitentiary that I was in. My greatest prison was not the 48 months I spent in solitary confinement. My greatest prison wasn't the shankings, the violence, the murder that I had seen coming up. That wasn't my greatest prison. My greatest prison was right here, thinking that I'm not worthy enough, I'm not qualified enough, I'm not credentialed enough. I always looked for something outside of myself to validate and authenticate who and what I was. And when I got paroled from that internal prison, it was on like Nucky Kong. Because I realized that it was this holding me back. With all that I was doing, I was always restricted. So FELON is an acronym that stands for 5 things that hold us back in life. And that's fear, excuses, limited belief, obstacles, and negative thinking. Now, once we are paroled from this internal prison, then the fear becomes faith, excuses become excellence, the limited belief lessens, the obstacle turns to opportunities, and the negative thinking becomes a new mind. But we got to get paroled. And I think all of us on this call, everybody listen to this, at some point in our life, we are in prison here. Not physical penitentiary, but some of us are in mental penitentiary, and we holding ourselves back. So now I work to help people get free, to help them get paroled from that internal mental prison.
Wow, that's a whole word. And listen, his website was up when he was speaking, and you can I'll have all of the websites for every one of the storytellers listed. But it's GhaziSpeaks.com. Is that the right place to send them? GhaziSpeaks.com.
GhaziSpeaks.com.
Okay, you are doing an amazing work, and I am so privileged to inhabit space with you. Thank you.
I love you. I love you. You my big
I
sister.
love you more. I love you more.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you, fam. Thank you, fam. Okay, so I was looking for other questions to see if anyone had in the audience, if you had any questions that you wanted to ask any of the storytellers. They are available. They are wide open. What's interesting is that if this were a live event, I probably wouldn't do a Q&A. I would encourage all of the audience to go and to interact with the storytellers, to do it personally and to do it privately. But this is a rich opportunity that we have for anyone who wants to do that. Okay, so we have here Agama Mama. She wants to know, did she beat the cancer? Can we pull Star back in? Fam, speak on it.
Hey.
Hey.
And yes, I absolutely did beat the cancer. And I'm still here. Um, and actually, I am in my third battle, and I am currently beating it again. It is almost gone. Yeah. So
Yes.
still persevering, still speaking and telling my story, still sharing, still living my best life despite it all.
Yeah.
It's in our DNA,
There it is.
resilience.
Absolutely. And when we do hashtag the Bounce Back RDU live, I want you to tell the story of the your 4 stages of breast story, like the 4
Yes.
stages of your breast story that you shared at what was that? Pink,
Pink
P is for pink, P is for pink, B is for
Yes.
boo. Yes, hashtag pink boo. Oh my
Yeah,
God, that is an audience favorite.
definitely.
That is an
Yes.
audience favorite. Yeah, so we're gonna have to
Yes.
share that one. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, like our
Yeah,
prayers are with you,
definitely.
like as you kick cancer's ass, like it's got to go.
Oh, continuously. This is
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is just the big. I'm at one of the greatest points in my life, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you. The stories have been phenomenal. Everybody's phenomenal. I can't even explain how excited I am to be
yeah.
a part of this journey with every one of you. And I love you too, X. Thank
Oh,
you. I
love you
love you.
more, love you more, love you more. And my our other favorite story. We'll have to do that one for adult night of storytelling. After the night after the Kid Capri.
Woo! Yes, I can't wait to tell that one. We got it pre-recorded for y'all already.
Hilarious. Thank you, sweet. Okay,
Yes.
hang on. Don't leave, like stay in the studio. Again, anyone have any other questions that you can pop through? Okay, Ruby says, Ade, where can we try your food?
Hi, Ruby. So right now, because of everything that's going on, obviously it's a little bit more difficult. But I do offer weekly meals. So I'll probably be doing one this week. So if you follow me on social media, Instagram, Dunu_cuisine, you'll be able to see it all post up, my menu and what I'll be offering that week or that day. So thank you so much for your interest, and also thank you for being here. Your story was amazing as well.
Yes, we had 3 other interviews that were private. We did a one-on-one interview
This is
with
a
3 of
good
the other
question.
storytellers, and they were so their stories are recorded on my Facebook page, author Alexus Rhone. If you go to my Facebook page, okay. So there was a question that we missed. I saw Jerti's question. Can we get her back up? Jerti. Let's see.
I actually saw the question.
I'm coming back to Rachel's here in just a second. You want? There we go. Okay. So Jerti wants to know, why did she get adopted if she was being raised by her parents because she wasn't an orphan? Great question. Speak on it, Ade.
Here's a good question. So thank you so much for your question. So I was not, I didn't know either. It wasn't something that was discussed with me. It was just like, this is what's happening. So that's what happened. It wasn't until I became a mother myself, because for a very long time, I didn't have a relationship with my biological mother, that we reconnected. And we sat at a table in front of each other in the summer of 2016. And we had this very difficult conversation about why. And I was able to share a bit of actually what this felt like for me and what my experience was. And, life is very funny the way that it works. And my mother's response to me was she didn't know what she was going to do. She was a lot younger than my father, and she had beautiful daughters. This is her saying this, I do think I'm beautiful, but this is what my mama said. And she felt like there weren't going to be many options for me being at home. And she took a chance in saying, because of, again, this perception we have of what America is, she went with that and took a leap of faith in sending me here and hoping that it all worked out for the best. And so there's a very good question. And this thing, it has layers. This adoption thing, there's so many layers to it. And so that was what my mom's response was to this question that I had for her myself. So thank you for your question.
And, it's so interesting that, children, we don't have choices. It's like mama, daddy said this, and so it is. But then can we talk about, remember when we were shooting your story and the cat was there? So they lives on this beautiful property. Like it's like that background with the water and the green belt, like all of that, like that is like her house is over there. So it's gorgeous. And so she has a dog, but then there was a cat, and she said the cat is normally like just kind of off to itself, but the cat would not leave. And she was like, why won't this cat leave? Like, this is so like unreal. Now, mind you, I have cat allergies. And so I was like concerned, like, oh my God, I'm going to like there's going to be a problem here shortly. But she was like, this is so odd. And I was like, Ade, is one of your ancestors here? And what did you have? When I answered that, what did you say?
I said, my father. My father was there. So my biological father unfortunately passed away in 2009. So there was no way for me to rekindle that relationship. But when he died, I remember we had a family reunion to kind of figure out what we were going to do. And I had never seen a cat a day in my life in this house or at this house. And this cat just appeared and would not leave at all. And was there the entire night of us trying to figure out what we were going to do, how we were going to get back home so we can bury my father. And so I just knew that that was him, especially because of the story that we were telling. It's one that I don't share. It's not one that I discuss. We talked about it. Sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable to talk about. Mm-hmm. And so I just felt like he was there, like, go on, you can let it go.
Absolutely. Well, but what I loved was that once she said, oh my God, my father, and then she shared the story that she just shared here a moment ago. I said to him, you're welcome here. You're welcome here. And there were several stories several of the storytellers when we were shooting, there would be something odd with an animal. I was like, wait, which one of your answers is here? Like, and then they would be like, oh my God, and they would tell the story. And I was like, you're welcome here. So this whole experience has been mystical and has been profound in so many different ways. Don't go anywhere, Ade. Let me pull up Dr. Rachel Lamb's question. She had a question. I think it was for Star. For Star, has she shared her story with her kids?
In bits and pieces, I've shared it, but no, not the way that I've shared it with you all tonight. And I can say also, for the sake of transparency and sharing this story, I'm not always super comfortable with sharing this because of who I am, what I do, and all of the negativity around feeling that way. But because normally we share this story, as Lexa said 1,000 times over this time, we share this story and I have an audience in front of me. But I also share this story with strangers. So it's easier for me to stand and tell this story in front of people that don't necessarily know me, because I think it's so important to do so. So it's harder for me to share with people that love me, that know me. But even when I was getting ready to do this, as I was going through my Facebook page to invite people, I was like, oh, who do I invite? Who am I going to let them know that, this is something that I actually have gone through, and I had to kind of get out of myself with that, because ultimately the reason that I shared it, even with my children, the bits and pieces that I have said to them about it, I share it because it's just important. It's so important for us to be able to share and be transparent and talk about these things, especially in our community where it's not talked about. You know, where our people that deal with any kind of mental issues or, you know, maybe pushed to the side or in the basement forever and only come up on Sundays for dinner, whatever it is. Um, it's important to share the story, but I'm not always super comfortable. And yes, I've shared it with my kids, but in bits and pieces.
Okay.
And but I was excited to be able. I've included them. They actually streamed in, and I know they're streaming in and watching as we speak. And so for them also, this was the first time that they actually have heard their mother tell this story, but they got to
Yeah.
watch it
Yeah.
today, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of that. And
Oh,
thank you for
they are
asking the
great.
question.
Yeah, yeah, that was a great question. Let me pull Ian in because, sorry, you mentioned something about vulnerability, but I'd like for Ian to share something that happened when he and I were filming. Ian, tell the audience what you learned or kind of what your goals for 2020 were with regards to vulnerability.
So yeah, we had a side conversation after our interview, but just a random conversation came up in the barbershop, and somebody had said, you know, you don't have a real friend unless you can be vulnerable with them. And I don't know, that question just hit me differently. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, think about it. If you don't have anybody holding you accountable, challenge you to be better, how can you say that's a real friend? And I thought about it. I was like, wow, that kind of makes sense. And I also just kind of looked at myself and I was like, wow, I have never really been vulnerable before. And when I kind of just looked at my inner circle and everything, I'm kind of the person that everybody kind of gravitates to, but I never gravitate to anybody. So one of the things that I wanted to do in 2020 was I wanted to make sure that I'm vulnerable and just paint myself in a different picture and even give my inner circle a chance to, you know, help me when I need it and call me out when I'm doing things that's wrong because, you know, nobody's above criticism.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. Okay, so Dr. Glover's asking, where can one donate for the nonprofit Teens Have a Voice Too? Can you post a link in the live chat?
Yeah, I got one of my kids running.
Oh, sweet, baby.
Yeah, log into the YouTube or whatnot, so they'll post it in a second. But
Okay.
For anybody who's curious to just want to learn more about me and my nonprofit, they can go to afterschoolspecialnow.com and you know you can donate or you know just kind of learn more of the groundbreaking things we're doing out here in the Triangle.
Yes, yes, doing some amazing things, amazing things. Okay. Any final questions that we have? I was looking for my moderator. There was one question that got pulled down. I saw it was from Rachel, and I wanted to chime in on that one if we could. But while we're searching for that, I will say, let me confess my filter. When I first pitched hashtag the Bounce Back RDU, it was initially an African American male storytelling set, and what I found was brothers have a hard time being vulnerable. Have a hard time opening up in that way. And I was like, wait, what? And so I, so I could, be able to produce the show. I'm like, okay, as I have a ton of, sister friends who are amazing storytellers, folks who have gone through my workshop. I've met and built relationships with different people and that sort of thing. So I appreciate you for trusting me, in this space and for really doing the hard work of excavating those deep, vulnerable emotions. Nobody really wants to hear your superheroine story. They want to hear, they just don't they want to hear where you failed, where you fell down, but where you didn't stay down. What did you do?
Yeah, no, that's true. And even if you think about the reason for it is, I don't think a lot of men even realize that, we're really not really taught to be vulnerable unless it's with, somebody we're in love with, whether it's your wife, girlfriend, significant other, but not really taught to be vulnerable with, your friends or just in general.
Yeah, true
Mhm.
that, absolutely. Well, Ian, I am so grateful for all of the storytellers, everyone who tuned in. Thank you for the comments, for the love. If you have questions that didn't make the chat, that didn't make the live stream, still put them in the live chat, and we will, we'll answer them, and we will, be sure to interact with you. And to get that information, I'm going to post the websites of all of the storytellers in the in the live stream, so that you will be able to follow them. They're doing some amazing work. So they are not just, interesting storytellers, but they're just like beautiful people, just in general. So as we close out this live feed, there's a high. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we close it out, let me pull up the announcements. There are 3 announcements that I want to make. The first announcement, it's coming up here shortly. Okay, bam. So for anyone who is interested in learning how to tell their story, if you want to learn how to tell your story, we got you. We got you. I want to I want to coach more people in transforming silence into language and action. If you notice on the live stream, I used a lot of Audre Lorde quotes. She has a very profound essay called Transforming Silence into Language and Action. And basically she is saying, hey, what is it that you have to say? What is the work that you need to do that is mitigated on your having your say? And so I realize that a lot of folks are being silent and quiet because they're like, well, I'm waiting on somebody else to find the words that I need. Well, I'm saying that, time out for playing small. Let's get together. I have 2 virtual workshops that are coming up. One next Saturday, the 27th, and then again on Sunday, the 28th. If you go to my website, alexusrhone.com, you'll be able to click the link. There's an early bird registration that ends I think it ends Monday at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we will be able to go from there. So that's the first announcement. Sign up for Transforming Silence into Language and Action, a storytelling workshop. I want to show you how to do what these amazing people did here before you tonight. So that's the first announcement. Let's pull up the second one. Bam, July 13. So I have been doing amazing work with doing these pitches and submitting these proposals, and I am loving my life here in the Triangle. I have been accepted into, I've had an improvisational storytelling workshop that was accepted into the WTF Con, which is a part of the Women's Theater Festival here in Raleigh. And I'm doing an improvisational storytelling workshop called What Do You See? Now, what we're going to do is there will be pictures from African-American photographers featuring African-American studies. And what I want to know is, what are you looking at? And you have to tell a story about what you're seeing. Now, because I know the photographers and because I know the subject matter, I already know kind of the backstory. I want to pull a group of people together and to look at this one image, but to tell many stories from it. What do you see? Go to my website and you'll see the link to WTF Con, July 13, 11 a.m. It's a virtual improvisational storytelling workshop. I'd love to have you join me there. And then my last announcement number 3, bam! Told you I was loving life here in the Triangle, and am doing big things with the Women's Theater Festival, WT Fringe, their 2020 virtual theater festival. My 1-act play, Call and Response, is getting 2 virtual shows. Woohoo! July 18 and July 25th. We are, the ticket link is not up for that one yet, but go ahead and mark your calendar. The July 18th show starts at 7:30. I think it's 7 or 7:30. And then on the 25th, it starts 11 p.m. Eastern. And that's to target my West Coast fam. Hey, West Coast, love y'all and miss y'all very much. And with that, let me bring up bring up the moderator, bring up the sister friend. Who am I? I am this person who has enjoyed my time here with you this evening. And I want to end our time with what I call the closing haiku. And it simply says, you search in vain for bitterness, sadness, and rage. There's none. We bounce back. May we leave this space contagious with joy and infected with bliss so that we may all enjoy a pandemic of love. Thank you for tuning in. God be with you. And the replays and share. Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized that there was the last thing I needed to do. All of my partners, their names are running across the screen. The Raleigh Arts Group, Kelly, Kirsten, Stephanie, Jen. Thank you, Betsy Ludwig of Arts Access, and all of the amazing work that you've helped me to understand about making art accessible. And Sarah Day Owen Wiskerchin of Raleigh Convergence, and Lauren Romer of HQ Raleigh. Thank you. I've been shooting in this amazing space, and everyone has just really rallied around me in this project. And so I am so very grateful. Thank you for questions or comments or feedback, or to sign up for any of my workshops. Hit me up, alexusrhone.com. All of that information. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Is Alex Unshackled or Unshackled Prod. And we're out. Thanks again for tuning in.